we're glad you're here. Our speaker today is Marcia Papin, Solid Waste Manager for Greenville County. After a stint in the Army for 3 years, she trained as a heavy equipment operator and then received a degree in construction engineering. She studied sanitary landfill operations, became the lead operator, and then the landfill supervisor. This is a field that is mainly dominated by men, so she might tell us a little bit about being a woman in such a field. Her department here in Greenville County operates 2 disposal facilities, 6 collection sites for Greenville County. Her work has improved our local resource management and recycling. Marcia's been involved in both the local and national professional organization, Solid Waste Association of North America. We'll be interested in hearing about regulatory changes, financial strategies, and new technologies that have occurred in this field over her many years of work. So welcome, Marcia Papin.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and having me to lunch and learn today. I'm particularly passionate about solid waste, probably always have been. I was one of those kids that would wait for the garbage guy to come down the street. And I was fascinated with the way they would roll those cans. I grew up in Detroit. And I would spend the whole summer trying to learn how to nail that can rolling that they did down. But COVID reminded me that the whole garbage business is something we all participate in together. The trash doesn't magically get out at the curb. You collect it up in your homes. And nowadays you are particularly fastidious about the way you collect it, whether it's a recyclable or if it's municipal solid waste. And you take it out to the curb, and then the point person for the whole industry is the collection operator, the waste guy, the guy that comes by and picks up your trash. So we're going to kind of start with that. My presentation is pretty broad, and I encourage everybody to, as I say something, slide it into the chat room so you don't lose thought. And I guess I don't have to tell you how to mute your phones because it's COVID. So hang on just a second. I'm going to share my screen. There. And advance my first technical difficulty is advancing my screen. So okay, anybody have any hints?
Is it a PowerPoint, Marcia?
It is.
If you go up at the top, you should have somewhere
remote control.
The remote control, and you should be able to either advance slide or start slideshow, whichever way you want to run it. Perhaps over on the left side where like the home button.
Remote control.
Essentially the same way if you were showing this in any other fashion, if you were running a PowerPoint.
Right. Well, there we go. I'll just talk then. Oh, give mouse keyboard control to
maybe
me. Marcia, do I type my name in? No.
What's running on your computer, I can't control. So if you,
yeah,
if it's a PowerPoint,
there we go. Okay,
there you go.
Okay.
All right. Perfect.
All right, so let's talk about Trash Man for just a minute as heroes. I love these guys because they're heroes to kids that stand outdoors, but sometimes they're really actually heroes. So just in February, 2 trash collectors in Louisiana rescued a 10-year-old girl, and they saw the Amber Alert and then they saw the car. So they pulled up off the curb and they blocked the car in so the guy couldn't leave and called the police. She was being kidnapped. 7-year-old rescued in Florida. He crawled up into the back of a dumpster to hide, and the garbage man was doing his job. He was paying attention, and he just quickly noticed something that didn't seem right, and he stopped the packing operation and grabbed a 7-year-old boy out, saved his life. And this happens all the time, but this one happened recently. There was a 93-year-old woman. So there was these trash collector, and it was in California, and the fires were raging, fire on both sides of the road. His dispatcher called him and said, come back, don't go up in that area. But he knew he had a half a dozen really old people in that area, and they were trapped in their homes because he knew they didn't have cars, they didn't have a real good way to get out of there. So he drove his truck up that pass, fire on each side, and rescued. There was one woman there that did not get out, a 93-year-old woman, grabbed her, put her into the front of the car, and she said it was like we were driving through hell. So, and he got back out and rescued her. But this is what the garbage man does. He knows, he goes down the street, he knows who isn't putting their trash can out, and he'll stop and he'll see, and often catches a problem, and sometimes just sadly reports that someone passed. So that's the guys that you know on the streets. That's the guys you see when you look out and think about trash. But the people in the solid waste industry, they're planners, they're engineers, they're finance people, they're HR people. It's a vast career with a lot of different levels of folks working on it, but these are the point guys. So if you look like these people, please say something. It means my presentation's not going well, but these are some of the topics we're going to cover today. Underpinning everything we do, whether it's a county operation or it's waste management, everything we do in solid waste is underpinned by customer service. We do this by solving people's problems. If you have a sofa or a hot water heater or chemicals in your shed or whatever you have that you don't know what to do with or how to dispose, that's our job to figure that out for you and help you with your problem. Collections has come a long way. In the way we collected when we were all young, or most of us were young, was a trash truck came by the house, picked up our garbage, drove to a landfill, the garbage went out the back, and then he drove back out, got some more, and drove back to the landfill. Sometimes they could make 2 trips. That's because when I got in this business, there were 157 landfills in the state of South Carolina. Today, there are 7 private sector landfills, 7 public sector landfills, and 2 landfill authorities for the whole state. So we're going from 157, which made it really accessible for the garbage trucks to pop in and dispose, to a system of much larger landfills, more efficiently designed and operated. But the way we transport now is your collector really doesn't come to the landfill anymore. He goes to a transfer station. And we stole this idea from the post office. You know, the little blue boxes they used to have out. We'd all go to the blue box. A truck would come by the blue box. He'd take it to another post office. That post office would take it to another post office. And then that post office took it to an airport, and so on. So now municipal solid waste, we stole that idea. And so usually your waste doesn't go directly to the landfill. It comes to a transfer station first. If you're not so fortunate to be in an area where curbside collection is offered, the county does offer residential waste and recycling centers. As you can see, it's a lot of fun to come. Bring your trash, you get to throw it. And these centers, we have 6 of them. They serve about 85,000 people a month and produce about 6,000 tons of garbage. that has to be then transported, again, the transfer bit, down to the landfill. These are our recycling boxes. The county does not offer curbside recycling, but we do offer these boxes spread around town. It's about a $600,000 endeavor to provide these boxes just on the collections end, have the boxes pulled. We do about 5,000 or 6,000 tons of waste a month in these containers, a year in these containers. And it's not a great system. The better system, the system where we get more volume, where it's more reliable, is curbside collection, but it's a service that folks demand of all ages, and the county provides that. We'll talk about glass later, but no, we don't collect glass. And I'm sure that's already on someone's question list, so I'll hold my tongue on that for now. This is this is where our centers are located. Apparently we were fond of putting them at the borders. So consequently, we get a lot of bleed out from the other counties coming to our centers. They are ancient. The newest one is the one number 16 that we built when we closed the Emery landfill, but the rest of them are ancient. Resource management. We believe that a large portion of the waste is a resource. So we're constantly looking at ways to increase the amount of waste that's currently going into the landfill into either reuse or recycling. So our newest endeavor has been with a company called Atlas Organics. We love to partner with private sector because, you know, if we get more money, it's coming from all of you. And we found a company, a fledgling company that did food waste collection. And those guys, at first I never believed that we were ever going to be in business together. They really, we met at a composting conference, and the guy that we signed up with had long blonde hair, and he kept flicking it and saying, talking like a surfer in California. And I said to our environmental engineer, I said, Susan, I don't think this one's going to work. I'm just hesitant. And I said, you know, we're going to have to invest some money to get the property suitable for this operation. And I said, you know, oh, we'll see. And it kept going along, and I kept saying, well, we'll see. Well, it's a great operation. You have to order the compost in advance. They're doing about 15,000 tons a year, and it's all food waste compost. There's no junk, there's no extra yard waste in there. It's bona fide, probably the few people in the States that are making a bona fide food waste compost that is now just an operation that continues to grow. And these fellas now have 4 or 5 other sites scattered around from Tennessee to Jupiter, Florida. They're very successful. So don't always judge a book by its cover, I guess is the moral there. Tires. This is a massive problem. So tires are produced at a rate of about 300 million tires a year in the United States. Most places they're landfilled. A few places, like South Carolina, they're banned from disposal. But the end markets, and the major end market used to be the cement kilns. The end markets are drying up. The cement kilns don't want the tires anymore because they're getting fuel from a cheaper source. So I'm not sure what's going to happen with tires in the future. And not just that, but the tire companies are changing tires. Now they're made with Kevlar. They're starting to make tires with a paddle inside. You know, the tire industry and how we think of and recycle tires, they're in a divergent course right now. So that's something I think in the future we're going to have to grapple with in a more serious manner than we are now. This is our guy. This is Atlas. As you can see, it must be buy one, get one watermelon at Publix. This is another one of the commodities that we saw as a resource and do a pretty good job of removing from the marketplace without, moving from the landfill without a ban. Brick, block, cement, any aggregate that we can use as road base, we take that for free, and we probably push anywhere from 18 to 20,000 tons a year out of the landfill into recycling for road construction. This is a material that's banned from the landfill. We sell approximately 8,000 tons to Atlas a year. We sell another probably 6,000 tons to landscapers, but we still have a lot of this material that's being landfilled, so we're constantly looking for additional markets for this waste. We're entertaining a company in Georgia that wants it for boiler fuel, and we're just trying to fit in how we can get the capital investment to bring the material up to a quality suitable for boiler fuel. But again, another area in which we're using our resources to not go in the landfill and become actual resources. This was a state ban. It's the e-waste ban that was implemented a few years ago, 5 years ago. And it's a very expensive endeavor for the county. It's about $250,000 a year in staffing, transportation, aggregation, shipping, and contractor costs to have it recycled. And these are some of the little ancillary guys that the state, they don't have a huge volume, but the state took them out because just from a household hazardous waste perspective, they're easy to capture and keep out of the landfill. So they added them to the ban as well. Not paint, we added paint ourselves. So let's talk a little bit about disposal. That's where I spend the majority of my time, although the convenience centers are quite time consuming by themselves. So this is how trash comes to the landfill now. This is most of the way we see it, that by percentage, the majority of the waste comes in tractor trailers. We have a tipper that picks the trailer part of the tractor trailer up in the air and the waste slides out. We do about 1,400 tons a day. And we take about, I want to say we take about a third of the waste generated in Greenville County. Waste Connections takes about 210,000 tons. Republic Services takes about 100,000 tons. And we take almost the other 280,000 tons a year. A lot of our waste comes from other counties. Let me go back here for a second. So the state, and when I talk about the big number, it's municipal solid waste as well as construction debris and all waste together, generate about 10 million tons. Of that 10 million tons, about 3.6 million tons are municipal solid waste. Of that 3.6, we import about 600,000. But on fair is fair, we also export about 100,000. So it's where waste goes anymore, it doesn't really recognize jurisdictional boundaries like it used to. So obviously most of our waste comes from North Carolina, but a fair amount comes from New York City too. Liquid management. So this is something that's changed a good bit over the years, but now Greenville County is managing all of the leachate that comes out of the landfill on the property. We reduced our truck and haul and took trucks off the road, reducing our carbon footprint, and we're evaporating the liquid part of the leachate, and then we're spraying the solids back up on the landfill at the end of the day. It's increased our costs a little bit, but it's taken our leachate out of the equation at wastewater treatment plant facilities, which really is a good thing because leachate's not homogeneous, so they can't test for it to know exactly what's in it. And it inhibits their ultraviolet light processes when they're trying to treat wastewater. Microbial farming, that's another thing we do. So the landfill, even in its aerobic state, it has bugs, but as it goes anaerobic, these guys really start to feast and multiply and feast and multiply. And that's what causes our landfill gas issues. And then we have to capture and destroy landfill gas to stay compliant with our air permit. So we have a developer and he's building a facility to take our landfill gas and turn it into methane that's suitable for the pipeline. He's going to inject it into the Greenwood Public Works gas system that delivers to the south end of the county. Great program. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but you should know that we're like seriously highly regulated. We hold a multiple of permits. We hold a permit for gas and gas reporting. We report to the federal government and we report to the state. We report groundwater and we monitor groundwater. And we hold permits for air. We hold permits for stormwater, permits for mulch grinding, yard waste grinding. I think we have 8 different permits that not only do we have to report, but we're also inspected monthly on. So landfill operations, here's those permits. As you can see, I'm not going to go back over them, but you can tell just by the amount of them, it's really highly regulated. It's expensive to run a landfill. It's about $250,000 to $350,000 an acre to build the bottom of the landfill, and about $150,000 an acre to cover and close the top of the landfill. That's the majority of where the majority of the expense is. And it's kind of an unseen, you get a capital expenditure, you build a bridge and everybody can see it and applaud it. It's a bridge, look at it, we're driving over it, it's wonderful. But when the county makes an investment in the construction of the actual landfill, the bottom of the landfill where the leachate's collected, and the top of the landfill where we finally get to close off any moisture and the bugs die and we stop farming microbes. That's an expensive ticket. It's kind of like buying tires. You want to put them in the living room the first day because it's like, boy, I spent $1,800 on these babies and nobody, so the landfill's that way, like tires. So you can see here the cost of our budget. The majority of it is spent in landfills and the convenience centers and our resource management. And then we drop on down. You see number 6 isn't actually depicted there because it's so small, but it's just because the rest of the budget is pretty big, but we do spend a considerable amount of time on litter collection. So our cost to dispose, our C&D cost to dispose, our all of our other services. The slide is just meant to show that our tipping fee is real close to the bone. We're making maybe 10 cents on the ton to be able to provide some of the other services like resource management. It keeps the costs low. When we talk about planning, everybody has planning all over the place. Our long-range planning, we can't do anything without thinking in terms of 10 years. We don't ever want to run out of a place for you guys to put the garbage. And then these are some of our challenges when we're planning. Collection and disposal capacity, keeping service levels, matching growth, shrinking leachate disposal options, recycling. Now they want to charge us to process it. Stagnant markets because everything's a commodity, and constantly evaluating new technologies. So this is where you clap your hands. Okay. And then if I can, I will unshare, stop sharing. There we go. Are we all back on? Oh.
Sarah, you need
I
to
think
unmute
we are,
your
Marcia,
share.
and I will read you the questions from chat, if that's okay. All right, here's the first one. Can you share any information on new technologies to be able to decompose plastics?
Well, they're always working from the plastics that we use. They're trying to work on decomposing, but it's usually in this market as something that has a very short life, plastic bags and all. Bottles, they really can't, you can't risk having plastic bottles sitting in a warehouse waiting to go out, and then there's just a warehouse full of water. So no, I would say that plastics and the plastic industry, that's a very serious problem as it relates to not just litter, but as the problems we're seeing in the ocean. And the littery part is the sexy part. Look, it's litter and it's horrible. But really the bad part is as that plastic starts to break down in the ocean, those microparticles are getting into the aquatic life. And that, I think, is a really global problem that we have to involve the manufacturers of the materials. There has to be a way to say that there's, they've got to limit the growth of the plastic market in some ways, or at least make them financially responsible for the carnage left from the plastic. And that's my personal opinion. I don't think that's the county's necessarily view.
Next, here's the biggie. Why did glass recycling stop?
So I'm sure you've all heard about the China sword, which is what came first, where we were sending, not just we, Scandinavian countries, European countries, the United States, Canada, the industrialized world was sending China, or the West, was sending China their recyclables in these empty cargo ships from the trade deficit. So the boat would come over, load up, and they were looking around like, well, what can we send back? So we were sending what was supposed to be recyclables to China, and we didn't. We sent garbage. It was not suitable. And China got tired of it. And they said, this stuff isn't clean recyclables. This is crap. Do a better job. And so with the sword, they said, do a better job or we'll fine you. We're going to stab you if you don't do a better job. So we tried, but we didn't do a better job. And then came the China curtain. And so they said, well, if you don't do a better job, we're going to send it back. We're going to look at a container. If it's not good, we're going to send the whole thing back. Then just the whole curtain fell down. Around the time that we were doing the trade negotiations with China, coincidentally. And so we lost that market. And then we tried to go to other Asian markets, and those closed too. Nobody wanted our garbage. So it forced us to look at issues with contamination. And since now we were all producing recyclables at the same amount, but we lost over a third of the whole market, we had to then look at what we were producing. And so each one of these material recovery facilities, like Pratt and Spartanburg, where all of Greenville County's recyclables go, they had to sit down and say, what can we do to keep this stuff marketable in the United States? And the technology really wasn't there to get the glass out in sufficient levels. So they said, we're not going to take the glass anymore. Now, we could have spent a lot of money gearing up, getting some new containers and spend transportation costs, but the county budget isn't like fat with extra stuff, or they'd fix roads and bridges. So they didn't want to make that expenditure to buy additional containers and set up a whole collection system for glass, so glass got nixed, so that we could be more competitive.
Got it. Okay, this is a silly, funny question. Is that a coffin on the wagon?
Could have been.
Okay, Dan, answer your question. Why is there no way to place dead batteries at recycling stations? And the same question for paint.
Okay, that's back to a finance question. We had a vendor for a little while that wanted the lead acid batteries that are in your car so bad because they were like bringing $15 for a core charge. They were also collecting our AA's. We said, well, if you want the batteries, the car batteries, you got to take the AA's and the AAA's and all the little guys. Well, initially they were, and then they started leaving them behind. And then we realized that this isn't a legitimate function. If they're leaving them behind, what were they doing them? So we went in search of someone else to do it. So they wanted about $800 for every 55-gallon drum. And it just was, again, it was the number of people actually taking their batteries someplace and legitimately wanting them to recycle was about 3% of the population. Everybody else was throwing in their trash. So it was a lot of money to not really have an environmental positive side. So senza leachate is not really, it's circular now. We did not see the expense to try to get a legitimate company and spend the many tens of thousands of dollars to capture 3% of the batteries.
Got it. There
Great
seems
answers.
to be less places for dropping off recycling instead of more. Why?
Because people don't like those bins. They don't like them in their parking lot. So we got kicked out of Walmart on Woodruff Road. We got kicked out of Roper Mountain when they sold that property or leased that property to someone else. Back in the day, it was easier to get those bins in. They weren't quite as popular. There were more parking spots and people didn't care. Now all of those places that have a parking lot, those bins take up a lot of spots. And it doesn't necessarily equate that the people coming to use the recycle bin are going to go in the store and spend money. So they didn't see a value in the bins anymore. And that's where we're struggling. We're very lucky to have the people we do have. We give them lots of incentives. We fix the parking lot if anything's repaired or damaged. But the reality of it is years ago, the county should have bought land. They should have bought the little spots and created staffed recycling areas, but that ship has sailed, I think.
Where is the recycling for compost in Greenville?
Atlas sells their compost down at Twin Chimneys landfill. They do some bag composting, and if you get their service, they'll come and pick food waste up and drop buckets of compost off. And so right now it's Twin Chimneys, and you have to call ahead of time and see if they have it and reserve some because they can't keep up. It's just become so popular. I've used it. A small amount in an area where I did some Mondo was a little uneven. So I put some of the food waste compost over there. On the other side, I thought I had a pretty good job. I tilled in a bunch of mushroom compost. On one side, the Mondo was still in clumps 2 years later, and on this side, it already started growing together. So it's good stuff. Honest.
Can ground up rubber in tires be used in roads?
It can, although it's not a solution to some of our problems. And the reason is it doesn't use much. So they have what's called a wet mix now, and the wet mix not only can be used in roads, but it much improves the road. It makes the aggregate stick better to the tar. It makes the road more impermeable to water and a little more flexible, but it's expensive to do the wet mix, and it doesn't use as much as we need it to use. So it's like 1,500 tons, or 1,500 tons maybe for 10 miles. So we produce, just at my landfill, we produce about 6,000 tons a year. And I'm just one landfill. So,
Yeah.
and the other thing that, we hate to regulate business, and I totally get that, because if we regulate business, then it's going to come back to us. All the money comes from our pockets, I like to say. But really, for those kinds of solutions, those kinds of long-term care solutions for the things we dispose of, are going to require someone saying you have to put that in your road. So.
Got it. This sort of is a follow-up. Is the tire industry doing any work to figure out appropriate disposal? Is Michelin here in Greenville helping in any way?
Every once in a while, there'll be there was a pilot out in front of Michelin where they put some crumb rubber, they paid to have it put in the road. But the long answer is no, there's no product stewardship in the tire industry right now in South Carolina. And incidentally, excuse me, there are 5 tire makers, period. 5 companies that make tires, period. All 5 of them are in South Carolina. Now they're in other places, but all 5 of them have operations in South Carolina. So you would think. What the state needs to do is use some of the state tire fee money to stimulate the markets, which means the state tire fee would have to go up.
Good idea. You mentioned we take some trash from New York City. How can it be financially possible for New York City to bring waste here to Greenville? What about their transportation costs?
Well, they rail it down. They rail it down. So it's really about transfer stations. Again, and in New York City, they have transfer stations that barge waste out, and they have transfer stations that rail waste out. And that waste is coming from waste that is railed out. So 38, almost 39% of the waste that we do import into the state is from New York. 40% from North Carolina, 15% from Massachusetts, and 5% from Georgia. Don't do the math because I left all the points off. It's a lot.
Wow. Next question. Explain liquid waste more from landfills. What does the liquid consist of?
Well, when waste comes in, it's already about 40%, has a moisture content of about 40%. So that's going to get squeezed out. We take a lot of sludges. So when the wastewater, the solids that are left from wastewater, they come out and they're about 80% liquid. So they get squeezed out. And then you've got some rainwater coming in, and you combine all those things, and it's about 30,000 gallons a day get squeezed out of the waste and become leachate, which has to be managed. It costs about 10 cents a gallon to manage it. It's another expensive thing.
Here's a little comment. Yeah, Sarah Lindsay says, several Ollie members toured Twin Chimneys landfill with the Sierra Club in November 2019. And she said, you were full of great information then and now. Thank you for today's update. Next
Thanks.
question. Dan says, after a trump is closed, how long before the land can be safely used? Greenville Tech is on an old landfill at their site, isn't that correct?
Well, I happened to work at Greenville Tech when I was young as a heavy equipment operator while I was taking the construction technologies degree. I worked there during the day because they had trained me to be an equipment operator when I first got out of the service. And actually, the buildings aren't on trash. That was a very shallow landfill that stayed on fire. Remember the Great Gatsby when they go out to where the landfill was? There was all this smoke coming up. But that's how Greenville Tech was. It just stayed on fire, and that was their mitigation tool. So it's not very deep. And they would just go in and excavate the waste from where the building was and put the building down on bedrock. So it's funny, the parking lot. So if you've ever noticed at Greenville Tech, have this sort of ocean wavy look. Well, they are not, they're on garbage, and that's why we don't build on the landfills. You can do a golf course. We have one of our landfills, two of our landfills have the aero model clubs, fly airplanes and have their runways. So you can do some low impact recreational activities on landfills. Just expensive to get them up and going.
Mary Lou says, we've known for years that microplastics are poisoning our environment. What plastic companies are working on solutions?
I think that's a really good question. And I think that's a big bit where not just in the United States, but around the world, sometimes we unleash things that we think, oh, this is great, and this is going to be a convenience, and it's going to keep it drier, last longer, fly higher, fill in the blank. And the reality of it is, there's not, it's just free enterprise. I don't know. I don't know if, I think they're resistant to that because they don't want to go down that road, because it could be I'm sure some attorneys saying, don't touch that.
Okay, Dan says, why are we taking garbage from New York City and other places? What is the estimated time frame for the current landfill? And where do we go for a new landfill?
Oh, well, we have taken waste from New York City. Don't get me wrong. If you go look it up, you'll see some. But it's like a refrigerator truck that originated from New York City, came down here, and their reefer unit broke and they needed to unload. So if you look at our report, we may have 18 tons from New York City just because we unloaded some truckload full of strawberries or something. But the companies that take, it's one in particular, it's Republic Services. They have a landfill in Lee County. It has a railroad on it. It's part of their business plan to take as much waste as they can, because the more garbage you take in, it helps cover your fixed costs, so it grows your revenue. So even though they may be charging them $19 a ton, and it costs them $40 a ton to rail it down here, it's still probably cheaper than the $75 or $80 a ton they're being charged in the Northeast. It's simple, it's just money.
I know it's 1:15, but I'm going to continue to answer the questions. You may leave when you wish, but I'm sure people ask these questions want to hear her answers, and it probably won't take that much longer, Marcia. Okay, how are mattresses and box springs dealt with?
In a lot of counties, they're doing box spring recycling. So there's some rules. There's some in labor in it. So I use this example because this is one of the ways that the state, when they banned e-waste, so we were already collecting e-waste. We were collecting e-waste that was profitable or at least broke even to recycle. Now that they've added the CRTs in, it's expensive. But they shifted a lot of our resource management money from something else, like maybe mattress collection or carpet, over to e-waste. And the volume is lower and it takes up more landfill space to continue to take mattresses and carpet than it does to take e-waste. But as you can imagine, you have to get the mattresses and you have to hand load them into tractor trailers, and then you have them shipped, and the generator charges you a fee to process them.
What happened to the $2 per tire recycling fee? We're the largest tire manufacturer in the country.
Well, there is a $2 tire fee, but now, so when they did the fee, it cost about $35, $45 to send and have a ton of tires recycled. Well, now it's $210 a ton. So the counties don't get the whole $2. If you're private sector and you send your tires directly to a recycler, which I'm not, I'm a collector, you get $1 back. Then they give some money to the counties based on our population. They give grants to help with contractor costs, but a lot of their money is spent cleaning up behind the waste tire recyclers that have taken everybody's money, piled the tires up to the sky. And write this down, check out the Viva, V-I-V-A, Viva tire cleanup down on the coast. I think it was in Monk's Corner. And this goes on all the time. They're doing one in Anderson. It's going to start up real soon. They spent maybe $3 or $4 million down at Monk's Corner cleaning that thing up. So,
Okay, last question. Do you sell the methane gas for commercial use?
yes, at Enery, when we closed Enery, our developer built 2 giant, I think they're together, they're 5,000 horsepower engines creating electricity and wearing that back into the grid, probably enough electricity to do about 2,600 homes. And when we had a profit sharing in that project based on our capital investment, so it was an 80-20 split. The county invested about 20% of the capital. Here on this next project, the county will get a portion of the profits, but we don't have as big a capital investment, so won't be as large of a profit.
Fantastic. You've done a great job. We've learned a lot. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. You're a great group.